Oh my goodness, don't you look good? My name is Helice, like Helen Ice. Bridges, like a bridge builder. At Sparky, I gave myself that name in 1984 so I could lighten up. I was taking myself much too seriously, and the reason why is that I was mom, one of the top business people in the Western United States, and living on the ocean, here at Pacific Ocean, beautiful home, and married to an amazing entrepreneur who was also very controlling and intimidating and verbally abusive man. And I thought he was like the coolest guy on earth. So I was very subservient, but looked up to him, and even though I looked gorgeous and so forth, inside of me, the spark inside of me was dimming every year of our marriage, of our 18-year marriage, and we had 2 beautiful sons, and but I kept thinking about suicide. I don't know why. I just kept considering that my life wasn't valuable and who I am did not make a difference. And one day, I just fell to my knees, and I screamed out loud for the heavens, and I said, "Stop the world, I got to get off and find a way where people love each other. I need to be loved." And I heard a voice that came through me, like maybe where Mozart's music comes through and that kind of thing. And it said, "You can't take your life because you're going to sing, dance, write, and have a musical on Broadway in New York City." Yeah, 1 minute I am just about out of this world, and the next word I go, "Really? How cool is this?" So I ran to my next door neighbor, because I didn't want to talk to my husband. I ran to my next door neighbor and I said, "Margie, I want to sing and dance and write and have a musical on Broadway in New York City." And you know what she said? "What, are you crazy? You're going to give up your successful career? You're too short to be a dancer on 5 feet. You're too old to be a dancer." That's 37. She said, "The chances of you being a published author, you can forget it. And besides, you can't even carry a tune." And I said, "Yeah, well, so? Can't you get a coach?" So I got mad, and I stormed away, and I called one of my clients who was on Broadway in New York, and I said, "What do I do?" And she said, "Go downtown to Stage 7 and audition for a musical." And I went, "Cool." So I went down there, signed my name up. What I didn't know is that those that were auditioning were 17 to 23 years old, and they were on Las Vegas and Broadway stages. They were professionals. So, and of course, when they sang these 4 lines, everybody applauded like crazy. And then I got up. I can't read music. I can't sing. But I was real proud. You get that? I was really, really happy. Hold my shoulders back, and I went like this. "Starting here, starting now." And the director said, "Stop, I think she's dying." And he said, "Get the beat on the music faster for her." And I finished my 4 lines, and everybody just stared at me. There was not one sound. No clap, no nothing. They just kind of looked at me like, "What are you doing here?" And you know how you're a kid in a candy factory, you're so excited about something that you're doing? I just stood there. I was so excited that I took that risk that I looked at everybody and with a big smile and I said, "So, how was I?" And I kept smiling because I was so happy. And all of a sudden they started applauding. And they applauded more, and I landed the role. I landed the role, not obviously because I could sing, but they thought I was a comedian. I didn't know. Well, here's what happened. I got to be with 17 to 23-year-olds, and we learned how to sing and dance and perform, and produce a musical comedy. And in those few weeks, it was so exciting. It was actually 3 months over the summer. I was so excited when I came back home. I looked at my husband and realized I no longer deserved to be there anymore. And so I filed for divorce. I left my career in real estate, and I reached out to find a way where people love each other. I needed to be loved and surrounded by people who are loving. And I found that the most important thing for my life was to begin to know how to love you. So I offer you my peace. I offer you love. I offer you friendship. I see your beauty. I hear your need. I feel your feelings. And my wisdom flows from that highest source. And I salute that source in you. Let us work together for unity and peace. Mahatma Gandhi. And I said, okay, but how do folk like us do that? You asking yourself that question? Go like that and say yes. Say it louder. Yes. Absolutely. So how are we going to do that? So here's what I did. I realized that wherever I went, people were feeling just like me. They had just gone through a divorce. Kids would run up to me and say, my mom has cancer. My father just lost his job. I saw the homeless, right? Saw politicians were arguing. Everybody is kind of pretty messed up, right? Okay. Yeah, well, all right. So I created a blue ribbon that says, who I am makes a difference. And I decided that I would go up to people and spontaneously just tell them how much they mattered. And I looked them in the eyes and saw their beauty. I took a moment and I heard who they were. I observed, and I went up to my kids' teachers, and I took out a blue ribbon and I said, I have a blue ribbon and it says, who I am makes a difference, and I would love to honor you and tell you how great you are. Thank you for being a fantastic teacher. Would you accept my gift of this blue ribbon? May I place it on you? And she looked at me and she said, wow, you're the first person that's ever told me I mattered. And I placed the ribbon above her heart, and I pointed it up toward all her best dreams coming true. And then I decided to take the spark that was growing in my heart and put it in the ribbon around this logo, which is a community of cheerleaders. And I took the spark from my heart and I put it in her ribbon that was over her heart, and I went, bing, B-I-N-G, bing. I said, that's the sound that makes dreams come true. Every time you hear a bing, you'll know that someone somewhere just got their dream. And I kept doing this, and all of a sudden, there's I watched for beauty everywhere. And I was downtown San Diego, and there was a burly truck driver, and he was bending and breathing. He's taking the boxes off like this. And I thought that was really good for his health. So he comes into the elevator with me, and I said, sir, I have a blue ribbon for you. It says, who I am makes a difference, and I'd like to honor you for bending and breathing. I said, it's good for your health. Would you accept my gift? And he looked at me. Like, yeah. And I said, may I have permission to place it on you? And he said, slap it there, baby. And I placed the ribbon above his heart, and I cheered him on for his dreams, and I gave him a bing. And he just stepped away from me out of the elevator, something like this. And then he stopped for a moment, and he looked at me, and he said, you know, there ought to be more people in this world like you. And with that, I reached in and gave him 2 more ribbons and said, here, go be one of those people. Pay it forward. So suddenly, the blue ribbons, everybody wanted it. In the first 3 months, 35,000 people were honored. Just from a handful of people coming to my home. And I had bought some ribbons, and I said, here, go honor people and come back and tell me what happens. And people would come back and say, all of a sudden, I didn't have a relationship with my father for 20 years, but I went and decided to go honor him and tell him how much he meant to me. And he just bursted out crying. And we hugged, and we repaired the relationship. And everywhere I went, this small group of people that gathered with me every week would tell me the difference this ceremony made. And suddenly everybody wanted a ribbon, and I created Difference Makers International, my nonprofit organization, so that every child would know that who they are made a difference, and we could build healthy children and families and communities worldwide. I had that vision. 300 million people in America, everybody being honored, every child knowing that they matter, every person, every parent, people of every age, race, religion, and everything else that goes on. Sexual orientation, whether you're rich or poor, didn't make any difference to me. Let us stop and look at people and tell them how special they are. But then I needed enough sparks. Because if you're I was just with NASA. No, not at NASA. I was with somebody from NASA last week. And I said I needed a good picture of a rocket ship because, see, how much fuel do you need to get out of this negative quicksand? To get into the outer space of who we really are, or the inner space, where love exists. And they told me that those solid rocket boosters, that all that fire that you're seeing goes on for 2.5 minutes, and then it breaks away, and then there's some other gadget that gets them out of the, gadget, you know. I'm not real scientific, but you get the idea. That's funny. Okay. So they get them to outer space, yes? And it only takes 8.5 minutes to leave the Earth to go to outer space in 65 to 100 miles. It takes us 12 years to go through school, maybe 4 years to college. And we still don't have unity and peace, do we? Go like that? No. Go like that, louder. No. All right, there you go. So we needed a lot of sparks, yes? Yes. All right. So suddenly, people everywhere wanted a blue ribbon. And the story I'm about to tell you actually came from one teacher in New York City, high school senior class. And the teacher stopped, and she had ordered a bag of ribbons from us, and she went up to each of her students one at a time, and she told them how amazing they were, how much she valued them. She looked them in their eyes. She saw their beauty and their value. She placed a ribbon above their heart and cheered them on for their dreams, not what their society told them to do. And when all 30 students were honored, she said, let's go out into the community. I'll give you an assignment, 3 extra ribbons. Go and honor somebody. Tell them how much they make a difference and pay it forward. Give them 2 extra ribbons, and then come back next week and tell the story. That afternoon, a high school student went to a junior executive, and he honored him for helping him with his career planning. Placed a ribbon above his heart, cheered him on for his dreams, gave him 2 extra ribbons and said, go honor somebody. It's a part of this class project. And that afternoon, the junior executive went to his grouchy boss, who was a bully. But he went up to him and he looked him in his eyes and he said, sir, I just want to honor you for being a creative genius and giving me this job. And I'd like to know, would you accept my gift of this blue ribbon? The boss was startled, and he said, all right. And he placed the ribbon above his heart and cheered him on for his dreams, and he gave him the last ribbon. And he said, this boy is doing a class project. Would you honor somebody and tell me what happened? That evening, the boss is driving home in New York traffic going, who am I going to honor? Who am I going to honor? And he decides to honor his 14-year-old son. He sits him down that night and he says, every night I come home and I yell at you for not cleaning up your room or getting better grades in school, but tonight, son, I just want to tell you that who you are makes a difference and that I love you. And the boy starts to sob and sob. And he gets up, he opens a drawer, pulls out a gun, looks at his dad, and he says, "I was planning on committing suicide tomorrow, Dad, because I did not think you loved me. And now I don't have to." That story changed the life of that businessman who went back and changed the culture of his company. Instead of putting everybody down and punishing them, he started to honor each person. The student told that story in class, and the teacher called me in 1988. And I said, "That is community. It is my dream that one spark in California could ignite a teacher in New York who honored 30 of her students and changed and saved the life of one boy in less than a minute." The story wound up in Chicken Soup for the Soul. Later, it was made into a half-an-hour television movie, and even later, it was made into a 6-minute photo movie that was #1 for 10 weeks on YouTube in the nonprofit category. Here's the gift. The gift is that one person can make a difference. Today, there are 40 million people that have been impacted by that Blue Ribbon message in 11 languages around the world. Now, I want you to meet and be reintroduced to, this is Captain Sparky. We're going out of space together, to inner space. The last frontier is we went to outer space. The last frontier is inner space, the place where we talk about love, the place where we can honor each other, to matter and make a difference. I was invited to the Environmental Earth Summit to speak following Al Gore, the Dalai Lama, the president of Earth Day USA, and I had a blue ribbon, and the only reason I got there was because somebody honored somebody who honored somebody with a ribbon, and they heard that I wanted to transform the planet for kids, to give kids a chance and a voice to create positive social change worldwide. I got called up, and they asked me, and they said, "We'd like you to come to Rio de Janeiro and speak. You'll be following Al Gore." I don't even know who Al Gore is. He wasn't even vice president of the United States yet. I didn't know. And besides, I said, I don't know anything about the environment, I don't read newspapers, and I don't drink sodas. So I don't know how to recycle. So I said no. Long and short is, about a week later, my little hairs in my body goes like that, and a little voice in my ear says, "You're going to Rio." So I call them back, and they said they already took my place. But anyway, fortunately, they changed their mind, and I got to go to Rio de Janeiro and speak on a main stage. There were 30,000 global leaders. And while I was in the audience waiting for later Montgomery Mahai, who spoke and later won the Nobel Peace Prize, she was getting on stage, and everybody else was in the audience waiting. And I sat next to a gentleman, and I said, "Excuse me, sir, but what brought you to the Environmental Earth Summit?" And he said, "Well, do you see the poster on the wall of Mother Earth?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm the astronaut that took that picture. That's Neil Armstrong." And he looked at me, and he said, "I had always thought that math and science were going to be the answers to the global problem until I went to outer space, and then I realized that the only way we can solve the problems of the globe was from the heart." I have a ribbon. It says, "Who I am makes a difference." One woman, one person at a time can change a life in less than I'm clicking a finger, just by love. But in this moment, let me tell you what happened. All of a sudden, everybody got ribbons. And I was invited to speak in school assemblies. And I stood in front of 2,500 kids. And I finished up by saying, "I have a blue ribbon. It says, 'Who I am makes a difference.' And I want you to know that I love you." And I'm inviting you to have a voice with me so we can transform the world, 1 billion people being honored with no one left out. Thank you very much.